This is Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. You are watching Sporting Icons. You don't need to be anywhere else.
Okay, so I thought I'd leave it a couple of days to really think about it before I do a video giving you all my thoughts on the debate that happened on Good Morning Britain between Eddie Hearn, of course he's the CEO and chairman of Matchroom, and Peter McCabe. Now Peter McCabe is the CEO for Headland, which helps those with brain injuries. Okay, so the debate obviously is going to be Eddie Hearn promoting boxing. Boxing's a good sport. Peter McCabe is, well, boxing isn't a good sport because it's causing neurological damage. Now, I can see Peter McCabe's side of the story, of course, because when you're working with people with brain injuries and all that, of course, it's cause for concern. Getting punched in the head all the time is obviously not going to be good for your brain. No doubt, no doubt. Now, for him to call that boxing should be banned, the boxing gyms should be closed down, that's a little bit too far. Now, one of the many reasons why is because people who walk into a boxing gym, and especially if they have aspirations to become a boxer, they know the risk that they're taking. Now, of course, yes, there is always that, well, it'll never happen to me kind of moment. And sometimes it does happen, okay? But it is very, very rare that boxers will suffer brain damage to the point where they're in a wheelchair or they're in a coma and ultimately, unfortunately, die. But yes, these things do happen, okay? But for him to say that, you should ban boxing and people shouldn't be encouraging their children to go to boxing gyms is too far, especially when he says that they should take up other sports like football and others. Now, football, of course, by the way, I'm talking about soccer, they head the ball. Now, okay, granted, the ball isn't as hard and as heavy as what it used to be in years gone by. It's like kicking and heading a medicine ball, okay, or a bowling ball back in the day. Nowadays, of course, it's a lot lighter, but it still hurts. There's still some force behind it, okay? I played football for many years. A lot of you will have done as well, okay? And heading the ball, it does hurt at times. It really does. You leave the football pitch with like the indentation of the ball on your forehead and that sometimes, okay? But is boxing a dangerous sport? Of course boxing is a dangerous sport. It is. But everybody who has the aspirations to become a boxer knows the risks. People should be allowed to make their own decisions. They should. But when it comes to the amateur clubs, the boxing gyms and children going there, it's not always about learning to fight. A lot of it is fitness. For those of you who have been in and around boxing gyms, especially if you've done like some kind of pad work in that, it is brutal. I'm talking exercise-wise. You see many, many fit people, professional footballers, will do it like a little bit of pad work. Their muscles are screaming at them afterwards. I've done pad work, I'm sure a lot of you have too. It burns. It's brilliant for fitness. The training of a boxer can be brutal. It's great for fitness. And that's the whole point of it. Now, most people who walk into a boxing gym are not going to be walking into the boxing gym straight away, getting in that ring and having a fight. That doesn't usually happen. And if that does happen in any kind of gyms, I would like you to report that gym, if you know who they are, where these young kids are walking into the boxing gym, going in there, gloves on, headgear on, hopefully headgear on if that is happening, but ideally it's not happening. But if it is, headgear on and having a bit of a scrap. Children should not be fighting. They should not be in the boxing ring sparring. They shouldn't be doing it. Body sparring, okay, to a point. But obviously a brain of a child is still developing. Okay? So what you don't want to be doing is disrupting that development. For sure, right? That's why I don't like watching some of the things that go on over there in, say, like Thailand and that, for example, where they have boxing, kickboxing and all that kind of stuff. Children and people pay. There is an audience to watch children beat the shit out of each other. And the parents are okay with this. Now, I understand money has needs must and all that kind of thing, but what kind of value do you put on your own child's well-being going forward? Now, ultimately, some people will fall in love with the sport. They'll do the training, they'll do the bag work, they'll do the pads, they'll do the exercises, they'll do all the kind of things, they'll do all kinds of boxing training. They fall in love with the boxing. They love being around the people in the gym. It does create its own little community. It does. And it does save a lot of people from walking down the wrong path. How many people have walked into a gym where they've been somewhat wrong-uns because their friends are influencing them in the wrong kind of way? They're resorting to crime, albeit most of it petty crime, but eventually it could lead to something a little bit more. At least where you're going somewhere, even if it's not a boxing gym, whether it be, I don't know, Cub Scouts or the Scouts or football training or gymnastics, whatever you're doing is great. And the boxing gym is one of those. It is. Now, I'm not going to say that every single person who walks into a boxing gym and they're wrong ones before they go in there are going to walk out better people. I'm not going to say that because ultimately some people are wired up wrong. Okay, some people will go to a boxing gym to learn how to fight and bully people. It happens. Okay, that's just, unfortunately, life. Okay, you can't stop it. You can't predict what people are going to do when they walk into a boxing gym and who you should teach and who you shouldn't be teaching. Okay, but ultimately, I do think trainers, boxing trainers, do need to have that kind of course of understanding the children and how their bodies work in the sense of their brains, their development, and all that kind of thing. And I was having a brief text message backwards and forwards on WhatsApp with Tony Jeffries. For those of you who don't know Tony Jeffries, he's a 2008 bronze Olympic medalist for Team GB, light heavyweight. He had to retire because he damaged his hands, okay, but he retired undefeated. Now he's out there in Los Angeles making a great life for himself, teaching boxing, all that kind of stuff. So, of course, that kind of situation is very, very close to his heart, which is why I texted him in the first place to start that conversation. But as he says there, it would be great if many of the teachers, the trainers, the instructors have a bit more of an understanding on the health of especially the children, but people in general. Okay. Again, there's too many boxing trainers out there. Again, if you've ever experienced it, and if you know of any gyms that do it, again, please report it. Please report it. Where you see people, they're stood there while their instructor, their trainer, is punching away at their body and starting to chin them in the head. That is not teaching you boxing. That does not teach you endurance. It does not toughen you up. It rattles brain cells. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to boxing, some people are going to inevitably end up brain damaged. What people may call punch drunk, okay, where they will start to slur their speech and things like that. It happens. Look at Riddick Bowe. Some fighters have, they get punched in the mouth so much that their mouth is almost numb. Their lips are numb. So it's difficult to understand them when they speak. Some people, Jared McLennan, Michael Watson, and so forth. Look what happens to them. And many other fighters. Extreme cases of fighters dying. Like Scott Westgarth and things like that. Okay? But again, a lot of it is down to not necessarily fight night. Fight night's going to be a contributing factor, okay? Because there's no headgear and the gloves are smaller. Okay? But it's the sparring. With or without headgear, okay? When you're getting hit in the head hard, it's going to have some kind of effect. It is. Now, I like certain training where, one of the most famous gyms for it, I suppose, is the Ingle Gym, Dominic Ingle, where they don't really do head sparring too much. Predominantly, it's body sparring, okay? That's what they do a lot of. But to go back to Peter's comment of banning boxing, listen, he's understandably concerned about the amount of brain injuries that's been going on, because obviously that's his field, okay? But how many of his patients have a background in boxing? How many? Compared to how many patients he actually has? It ain't going to be many, is it? It really isn't. Listen, anything could happen. You could get a rotten cold, some flu or something, and it could end up affecting your brain. Get a stroke. You could walk out, get hit by a car, walk walk across a football field, get a ball in your head, and all that. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. But to ban boxing, no. Boxing does instill discipline, or at least it should. It doesn't in all circumstances. As I said, there's rotten apples everywhere you go. But they're going to be rotten apples with or without the boxing. Okay, they are. But it's a good way for children to have discipline of training. You have to be here at the gym at a certain time. You have to put in the work. You have to be seen to put in the work. And of course, we're talking the training. We're not talking the fighting. The fighting is something that children shouldn't really be doing. Techniques, of course. But again, a lot of the children who do go into the boxing gyms, they don't go in there because they already think that they're tough guys and they can do it. And a lot of people who do that, even grown-ups, teenagers, who walk into the boxing gym thinking that they're Billy Big Bollocks. Okay, go on in. You're a tough guy. Get in that ring. Or get their ass handed to them. And that is the way of boxing in these boxing gyms. You get humbled. You do. But a lot of it is learning self-defense. It's much like when you were a kid and you walked into karate classes. Of course, I've done that more than I did boxing. But it is a way of learning self-defense. Is it a way to use it to attack your opponent and become an arrogant prick on the streets? No, and it shouldn't be. But you should be able to defend yourself. Why shouldn't you? If you're getting bullied in the school, in a nightclub, wherever, you should be able to have at least know a little bit of a technique. Just one or two punches that you can throw quite confidently, knowing full well that if it lands, you avoided a scrap. Okay, you've just incapacitated your opponent, and then you can walk off and carry on with your day or your night. Okay, and it doesn't always have to be a case of landing one big punch around the chops. It doesn't always work that way. Listen, the best place to punch somebody is right in the middle of the chest. That'll put a stop to most people. It really will. But that said, a lot of it is down to training. It's discipline. You can't close boxing gyms because somebody might get brain injury. You can't do that. There's plenty of different things that might cause brain injury. As I said, this Peter fella, and listen, his heart's in the right place, okay? I'm not going to criticise him. I know the likes of Tony Bellew and now called him all kinds of names under the sun, but his heart is in the right place. But ultimately, listen, if boxing and if all these kind of things if all the kind of sports that were contributing to the amount of brain damage going on, if they all ceased, well, he's going to be out of a job, isn't he? That's the brutal truth of it, isn't it? But ultimately, it's down to the individual. It is down to the individual. But ultimately, instructors need to have a bit more of a pedestal where they need to understand it's not about the fighting always. You can't just get a kid, throw him in the boxing ring and say, all right, kid, let's see what you got. Shouldn't work that way. Shouldn't work that way. Now, I think when they get to a teenager kind of level, sure, why not? Bit of light sparring, see how it goes. Ramp it up a little bit. Enter some local tournaments, area tournaments and things like that. You can do that, of course. But again, most people who walk into the gyms don't actually return, okay? But again, everybody who does walk into that gym, everybody who puts on the boxing gloves and that, they understand the risks. And it is a risk. You can't ban something because something might happen, and something does happen once in a while. There's far more things that go on in the world that cause brain injuries than boxing. Yes, it's dangerous. It can be brutally dangerous, extremely dangerous at times. But a lot of it is down to the sparring. That's where a lot of the damage happens. Advice to all coaches, reduce the head sparring a little bit. I'm not saying cut it out, I'm saying reduce it a little bit. Anyway, that's my thoughts. You drop me yours. Quick thumbs up, subscribe. Catch you on the next video.